Hey everybody, you're listening to the Cranks Creek Life Podcast, where we discuss random topics and share bits and shreds of information to help you not only live life, but savor it. Welcome to our 5th episode. We're the Cranks, but I'll be flying solo today. I told Christy this would happen. She did not believe me. I know she is not thrilled, but I also know she still loves me. Today, I'm once again broadcasting from the Cranks Creek studio in our Mechanicsburg, PA location. Full disclosure time, folks. Regarding this podcast, I am worried as to whether any listener will gain even a bit or shred of information they will find helpful in living their life. So what I am saying is now is your chance to skip out if you're expecting anything practical. But I do promise fun. The idea for this episode? Well, several years ago, when navigating through some difficult times, I did quite a bit of journaling and, for certain, a hell of a lot of reflection. I wrote numerous, I'll call them brief chapters, kind of like my attention span, very brief, and they were about my life experiences, many about my childhood in Northeast PA. Now, some of the best were chapters from later in life on internet dating. I mean, you want crazy stories? I could do a very long series on those experiences alone. I will never forget a particular woman who reached out to me. She sent a pic of her in pajamas holding her cat in a dress. Let me be clear. The cat, not the woman, was in the dress. I mean, come on. There's no way I was going to date her more than a few weeks until I broke off the engagement. Okay, back to the writing. So I started each chapter with a quote that tied to the topic on which I was writing. Some were from famous people, others not so much. Recently, I thought, why not share some of those stories, beef them up a bit with some additional perspective and history? You know, at the very least, I thought it might end up being a bit entertaining, if not informative. Too often, we underestimate the power of a touch, a smile, a kind word, a listening ear, an honest compliment, or the smallest act of caring, all of which have the potential to turn a life around. Leo Buscaglia. The year was 1982. The location was the Blue Tavern in Minersville, Pennsylvania. The event, the dinner after the funeral for my maternal grandfather. I was 17 and I grew up Catholic, which doesn't make me a bad person. I can tell you who the bad people are, but we'll save that for a different podcast. I was an altar boy and a church lector since about first grade. As such, I participated in dozens and dozens of funeral services. I had also attended numerous funerals for relatives, as well as many funerals for friends and my parents who had passed. It was typical for my dad to drag me along for at least the viewing, if not the funeral mass the following day. Don't judge me on this, but it was to the point where I had just grown numb to those situations. But with my grandfather, I remember it feeling different. I was obviously sad, but remember being a bit down and depressed. It actually scared me. Probably the first time someone that close to me had died. I adored my grandfather, really enjoyed being around him, and loved the times we shared. During Sunday visits to my grandparents' home in Branchdale, like clockwork, my grandfather would come home from the mine in the early afternoon, always having first made a stop at the store for a gallon of Hershey's ice cream and a big bag of Marsden's potato chips. And that was when they actually made gallons of ice cream and put something in the chip bags other than air. But ice cream and chips aside, this guy always had some time for me. Without a doubt, I looked up to him and with total respect. Okay, sobby stuff out of the way. So I'm at the restaurant, the Blue Tavern, one of the premier spots for funeral receptions in the greater Pottsville area. I had just left the bar area after grabbing a refill on my soda and was sitting alone at my table. That's when my great-uncle Stevie, who's standing at the end of the bar, yells over to me, "Francie, why so sad?" Now, to me, this seemed like the most ridiculous question. It actually pissed me off. Even by that age, I developed an advanced talent for sarcasm, and there were a number of bitey responses just churning in my head. But he did not seem to even care about my answer. Instead, he immediately motioned for me to come toward him. Now, I was a bit intimidated, as he was there with his brothers-in-law, Frankie and Johnny, all three in the best dark suits they owned. Honestly, they looked like they could carry out a hit. And from my perspective, my great uncle Stevie always appeared to be a tough, callous, and very intimidating man. Looks, talk, walk, all of it. He asked whether I'd ever tasted Boilo. I told him I had never tasted it and cautiously asked what it was. He said something to the effect of it's difficult to describe and I should simply trust him. I'm thinking this is basically a stranger offering me what I believe to be alcohol at a bar, right? Of course I'm in. So I approach the bar and he stares at me, pauses, and asks, "How old are you, Francie?" I told him 17, and I'm thinking, damn, this is going to be the deal breaker. He looks at Frankie and Johnny and says, "Hell, he's more than old enough." I'm thinking I really like this guy. I believe he felt even more comfortable when I shared that I drank altar wine from the sacristy at the age of 12. I definitely gained credibility with that confession. He then motions to the bartender, who, without hesitation, picks up a ladle and scoops this steamy liquid from a metal pot into four small plastic drink cups, probably 3 to 4 ounces. I later found out that the magical recipe was partially composed of a 101 proof blended whiskey, Four Queens, which is quite the economical purchase. I recently purchased some for $47. That may not sound like a deal, but keep in mind, folks, that was the total price for 5 bottles. It was originally distilled in Philadelphia, but it's now owned by a company and distilled in New Jersey. It's a particular favorite in North Central, Northeastern, and East Central PA, but nowhere more than Schuylkill County. Just a few years ago, I read an article stating that 95% of Four Queens' total U.S. sales were from Pennsylvania. No doubt an amazing fact, but even more amazing, 25% of those PA sales came from Schuylkill County alone. That makes me quite proud of my Schuylkill County roots. So what is Boilo? Boilo is basically a high-octane hot toddy drink that has been around for well over 100 years. Most popular post-Civil War to the 1960s, miners with roots in Ireland, Italy, Eastern Europe would spend all day in horrific conditions in a 50-degree mine, come home, and warm up by pouring a small cup of Boilo. They did not have 101 proof Four Queens whiskey back then, so their Boilo base was just good old-fashioned moonshine. They served Boilo steamy hot, and it was so potent they called it the miner's cure for everything. As for its roots, well, they're traced back to Poland and Lithuania, possibly as far back as the 16th century. They called it krupnik or krupnika, which is actually a spiced honey liqueur. No one really knows where the name Boilo came from. Some believe the name Boilo is nothing more than an anglicized version of the Lithuanian word for boil or cook, although you certainly do not boil the ingredients because you want to prevent the alcohol from evaporating. And remember, alcohol's boiling point is only 173 degrees. So that's the reason you need to remain careful about overheating the mixture. Let's talk ingredients. These can include, and I say can include because there are many, many recipes out there, mine included. We got citrus fruits, typically lemons and oranges, but sometimes a grapefruit as well. And that includes the fruit rinds and seeds. There are herbs and spices, which can include nutmeg, cloves, cinnamon sticks, caraway seed, anise seed, and raisins. I use the golden ones. Spicy ginger ale is also added, but some add water. I have no clue why anyone would do that. It's actually wrong, and they're foolish people. But as I mentioned, there are so many different versions of Boilo, which I think makes it even more interesting. People even make it with apples, peaches, blueberries. I mentioned that traditionally, homebrewed moonshine was initially used, although 101 proof Four Queens blended whiskey has been the choice for many years. There are old wives' tales about Boilo exploding and burning down some houses in the 1930s. I mean, think about this. Heating up a large pot of flammable liquid over an open flame, how can that not be fun, right? When I was once reheating a batch, I spilled some over the side of the pot and onto an open flame. Quite the flare up, folks. A lot of people prepare and heat their batches of Boilo in a crock pot today, and I have found that this is just a much safer way to allow the ingredients to just magically blend together. After a few hours on the stove or in a crock pot at a very low temperature, you see the fruit breaking down, and then it's time to strain the mixture. And the straining involves pressing the juices out of the fruit that has absorbed the spices over the last few hours. Only after straining a few times do you add the alcohol, and that's very important. In the end, you have this beautifully colored, warm, aromatic mixture that is just nothing short of angelic. Okay. I believe it's similar to the composition of angel's blood. In fact, that's going to be my new boiler recipe name. Okay, back to the other part of the story. We're at the bar, each holding our small cup of Boilo. I listened to these gentlemen share some kind words about my grandfather, or Anthony as they called him. They welcomed me in their toast, and I recall them speaking as we raised our glasses, saying what I now know to be Nazdravia, simply the Slovak or Polish way of toasting to your health. I drank mine more like a shot, which I think impressed my Uncle Stevie. However, he slightly scolded me, saying that Boilo was a sipping drink to warm one's body, but mostly warm the spirit. I will never forget that. It's a pretty insightful and free tip, folks, so pay attention. Fortunately, he was patient with me and counseled me over a few more drinks, helping me to eventually master that proper sipping technique. I have to mention that I recall my dad seeing me at the bar with these gentlemen. He was definitely not impressed, yet he let me be because I really think he somewhat understood, and he also knew I was safe. Each time I look back on that day, I continue to find it so interesting that on the surface, my great uncle had appeared to be such a tough and callous guy, so very, very unapproachable. His actions that day were totally unexpected, and he really just caught me off guard. I think he looked over at me and just saw sadness and some confusion. It took me some time to view that experience not for the boilo, although it was delicious and I will continue to make it, but rather for someone simply taking the time to reach out, something we all need to do more of, me included. Well, folks, that's it for today. Thanks for allowing me to share one of my favorite and most memorable childhood experiences and also share a little bit of information to help you save your life. Hey, wait, I did it. Be sure to check out the show notes for a few links for some good old fashioned boiler recipes. They'll get you started if you're interested in concocting your own batch. And lastly, a quick shout out to my friends and relatives, either originally from or still living in Schuylkill County, the heart of the Boilo Belt. Thanks again, everybody. This has been a Cranks Creek Life production.